Bayo TAB is here with us, newspaper reviewer. Bayo, it's good to see you again today.
Thank you, Kirian. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley.
Right, Bayo, good to see you.
Good morning. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's begin today's review by taking a look at the front page of the Daily Sun newspaper. Daily Sun, you have the following headlines on its window page. Lawan, that's the Senate President, defends cars and jumbo pay for lawmakers. That's one of the headlines there. Nigerians to pay more taxes and levies next year. FRS nets over 5 trillion naira, upbeat on meeting VAT target. Gunmen attack police headquarters, kill inspector in Abuja. Another 10 in Plateau Market, and strengthen your capacity to deal with crimes. IGP charges CPs. Stronger executive-legislative partnership will deepen democracy, says Buhari. ASU issues strike notice, demands implementation of 2009 agreement with the federal government. MTN and Mafab Communications win federal government's 5G auction. COVID-19 will no longer accept short shelf life vaccines. That's according to the federal government. And only fully vaccinated graduates will serve from next year. That's for the NYSC scheme. You have details of that on pages 8 and 27. We also take a look at the Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune has a story, COVID-19, that's the kicker. Nigerian Tribune now says UK records first Omicron death and EFCC bars on vaccinated staff. That's on page 5. And new finance bill. Federal government proposes 5-year J term for non-remittance of tax and other revenues. And Nigeria regains top crude oil production spot in Africa. It's according to a report by OPEC, and that's on page 6. 124 years after Benin Palace takes possession of stolen artifacts, page 15. Mixed feelings as Lagos earmarks 5 billion naira to kickstart monthly rental policy. Details on page 18. Kirian.
All right, now let's turn to the Nation newspaper. And above the name flag, Lawan, that's the Senate President, 13 million and 8 million allowances, not enough for lawmakers. That's on page 1. NNPC plans gas supply increase to cash price, page 4. Now, MTN Nigeria Mafab wins spectrum to deploy 5G. Bandits kill 10 in fresh attack on community. That's on page 3. Travel ban, that's the lead story. Nigeria UAE diplomatic row escalates. Airlines ordered not to fly Nigerians into Dubai. Flight bans will be sorted out next week. That's according to the minister. All that's on page 4. Then Paris Club reform. Governors fail to stop $418 million deduction. At the foot of the nation, INEC will have capacity to monitor primaries. 20 die in Bauchi accident. All that on page 3. Let's bring in Bayo now.
Thank you, Kirian. Let's start with the arriving 2 licensees now who have won the bid for the 5G network. 2 telecommunications outfits out of the 3 that bidded have won the 3.5 gigahertz spectrum that is to be allowed for the 5G network. The NCC declared that the MTN and Mafa Communications won the 2 slots for a total of $546 million. The executive vice chairman of the Nigerian Communication Commission, Professor Umar Lambata, says that after 11 rounds of auction, which lasted several hours, 197.4 million was served as the reserve price, and the bid auction ended with each at $273 million for each. The Minister for Communication and the Economy, Issa Pantami, clarified that the World Health Organization as well as the International Telecommunications Union, both agencies of the UN, have confirmed that the 5G has no negative effect on humans. The Oba of Benin, Oba Erudia Eware II, yesterday signed document for the return of 2 artifacts to be returned from Britain. They were taken away illegally about 124 years ago. The 2 artifacts expected to be returned are a bronze cockerel and Oba bronze head, expected to be returned from the University of Cambridge and Aberdeen. An elated Oba Uwari commended the role played by the federal government in the return of the artifacts. And he says the artifacts represents the art, the culture, the spirituality, and the glory of the kingdom. Oba recalled that it is not the first time artifacts have been returned. He said the first was in 1938 when the coral bead coronation regalia was returned to his grandfather, Oba Akinzwa. He recalled emotionally that on that occasion, Oba Akinzwa stood and sang and said, Obi Bemi Sagele Mayo, and the whole chorus, the palace, and all the audience, chorus Sagele Mayo and Oba Atokwae. The second was in 2014 when 2 bronze stools were returned to Oba Erudiawa. The third one is 2021, yesterday, when it is hoped that, expressed the hope that others in Germany and other European nations will be returned to Nigeria. Clarification has been given by the Senate President on the earnings of the members of the National Assembly. Senate President Ahmed Lawan clarified while speaking at the lecture series by the National Institute for Legislature and Democratic Studies, and he said the monthly salary of a senator is 1.5 million, while that of an honorable member is 1.3 million monthly. 1.5 million monthly amounts to 18 million for senators per annum, and that for 109 senators, that is 1.962 billion per year. For the 1.3 million salary of a member of House of Representatives, it amounts to 15.6 million a year, and for the 360 members of the House of Rep, it amounts to 5.616 billion. He said the figures that was touted in public domain as salaries are actually not salaries, but quarterly office running costs. He also gave clarification on that. He said for a year, the running cost paid to a honorable senator is 13 million quarterly, while those paid to the honorable members is 8 million quarterly. If you add that one up, for a senator it's 52 million per annum, and for a member of House of Rep it's 32 million per annum. For each, if you add the salary of 18 million per annum, allowances of 52 million per annum, which means each senator gets emolument salary and allowances of 70 million per annum. For each member of the House of Representatives, a salary of 15.6 million per annum, allowances of 32 million, it adds up to 47 million per annum.
But if I may ask,
Yes.
Bayo, why all these explanations? What was the need for the explanation?
Good. Now there is information in the public domain that the National Assembly is responsible for high costs. And he put this in the public domain to say that, in fact, the National Assembly is underfunded. And
now,
in comparative terms to other allocations provided to sectors on the arm of the executive.
Fine and good. Assuming you do a compare, of what Nigeria spends on running the National Assembly and what other nations do, there is this belief that ours is on the high side.
Yes, there's always been claim that Nigeria's legislature, the cost of running government in Nigeria generally, is the highest around the world. But there has not been data put in the public domain to support that contention. Meanwhile, in Kaduna State, the panel set up to investigate police brutality has submitted its report. Justice David Nyom said that they received 64 petitions. 19 were dropped for lack of evidence, and 7 were dismissed for lack of merit. The panel recommended for payment to 23 petitioners, amount of 274 million, and that was for award for deaths, injury, and permanent incapacitation. It's also recommended that erring police officers should be prosecuted. the deputy governor, Dr. Hadiza Balarabe, who received it, said government will study it and issue a white paper to that effect.
Well, wow, thanks a lot. I don't want to, engage in some chest beating this morning. That is part of the story that you drew attention to, and which was also one of our headlines and story in our news bulletin. That has to do with the former handing over of the deed of transfer of the artifacts that were looted from the Oba of Benin's palace in 1897, following what was then known as the British expedition against Benin. It was a war that was declared on the Benin Kingdom. Now, why am I saying this? In 2003, early 2003, I wrote an article in my column then in The Guardian, and the title of the article was Letter from the Museums of Loot. Now, what happened was that a consortium of curators of museums in Western countries indicated that, it would not be proper to return artifacts that had been looted and that they were properly curated now in museums and so on and so forth. They gave all kinds of reasons as to why those artifacts should not be returned to their original locations. At that time, of course, if you went to the British Museum, to an extent, if you still go there now, in London, you will find looted artifacts, including the Queen Lydia mask that you have there. So I wrote that article, and of course, lampooned the curators for what they had done, and that those artifacts did not originally belong to them, and therefore they should be returned to their owners. That you cannot purport to be a better curator of what doesn't belong to you than somebody else who's the original owner. And that if tourists are coming to your parts of the world to view those things, they could very well also be coming to the countries where those things were originally taken from.
Yes. What are they curating? Something you did not produce. Something you did not produce, and you're now a better curator. I mean, it's a
better keeper of your stolen property than you.
Exactly. I think it's a good development, really. What has turned out yesterday. I watched the ceremony live on NTA. Where the Oba of Benin is, celebrating that. It's worth celebrating because over 100 years, of looted artifacts, being returned to the real owners. You see, this is one of the reasons why sometimes we say that, look, yes, we are an independent nation, yet there are other areas where we're yet to be independent. Exactly.
And just to also point out, as I said, that one shouldn't engage in chess between these matters, but just for the purpose of further elaboration. In one or two art colleges in Canada, these matters are also indicated for reading. These issues relating to artifacts removed from their original locations, either by stealing, looting, or purchase, and then kept elsewhere for public viewing and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, I think that we also have to ramp up much more readily now to ensure that our works of art don't just get across our borders. Sometimes you wonder, Kirian and Bayo, whether some of these persons who are supposed to be guards realize the value
of those artifacts.
I know that the National Museums, and monuments, tries to get that. Sometimes when you want to export, you have to get a permit or a receipt for all that. But there is a place I visited once. It was an art shop in Cape Town, and I was shocked by the sheer number of works of art, bronze, brass works, obviously from Nigeria. Obviously from Nigeria. And I mean, part of the interest in this, I should say, is that, the guilds, the carvers and the bronze and brass casters guilds are in Benin. And some of them, of course, were my classmates in the primary school. When you saw the way they were doing it, pure work of art. Yes, exactly. Pure work of art, So that's
procedures. There are procedures for taking works of art out of the country, and it has to be approved by the commissions of museums and monuments, yes. And there must be a certification which must be confirmed at the point of departure at the airports before it is allowed to be taken in.
Why even taking them out in the first place?
No, the others, because those who are engaged in those artwork sell some of them for their own livelihood. It's not all that are meant to be preserved at the museums. Some of them are supposed to be appreciated, possessed by others. So they are legitimately sold. So once you have
who-
legitimately,
those
yes,
who are doing that as business,
yes,
the
sell
covers
them,
and
cover,
makers
sell
and
some
so
of
on,
them,
doing
yes.
it as
And the
business.
So there are
casters, yes.
unique ones that are preserved and kept in the museums. The ones that are meant to be preserved for posterity are the ones that are prohibited from being taken away, like the ones that were frittered away illegally abroad.
But see, talking about this, you know, Kingsley, you have a better knowledge of this. You know, are there individuals in Benin who are doing this, or the carvings or the casting or whatever it is, as business?
Yes.
Of course, that's why they're a guild.
Yes.
Now,
That you have a guild of casters you call it, that they are located on the street called Igun Street or Igueomo. Igueomo. That's the full name of it, Igun Street. So and they pass it from generation to generation. Yes. So that is their work.
and do they have the authority to sell outside Nigeria?
Oh no! Well, no. People will come. Tourists will come.
Yes.
There are a number of those things are now produced for sale, but there are unique ones. It's not every treasure, every item that's an artifact. An artifact usually will be dated,
Yes.
and then an artifact could also be for a specific purpose. But for the general ones that you have that are produced, you could take your own photograph, for instance, and then ask them to make a bronze or a brass cast of it for you. That can be done. And then you have all kinds of forms that are produced. But for you to export it from the country, then you must get a certificate from the Museums and Monuments Commission.
In fact, last week, the NTA Benin highlighted initiatives to help those who are the carvers there to introduce some element of modern technology to help them improve their artwork. And they were very appreciative of it.
That's right, that's right. I mean, it's, once again, to go back, you know, there are what we call bellows. The way you
Yes.
heat up this with coal, and then you fire with red earth, and it goes on and on.
It's a complex process. really,
Yes, so
it's not
melting
easy
bronze
it's not an
and
easy
brass
thing to
and
come
then
by.
casting them.
And to see the
Carving
way
wood.
sorry, I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit. Let's just, when I was talking about guilds just now, almost virtually around the same quarters, you have the guild of carvers. Carvers, you have them around the Besama and Oza Street. And then you also, in the same vicinity, all walking distance, a place called the Ikpema. These are professional drummers. You know, that just tells you how it was, you know, the city was organized. By the time the British came in the latter part of the 19th century, it was the Portuguese who first arrived in Benin Kingdom in 1420-something or 1450-something, 15th century, by the way.
Yeah,
And when they came, you know, they were shocked by the level of organization.
It was indeed the Portuguese that first hit Nigeria, you know, during that period.
That's right. And we had, the Benin Kingdom had diplomatic relations with the Portuguese.
All right, Bayo, this is the much
Well,
time can allow us to take.
Thank you.
For today. We'd like to thank you for coming. I hope to see you again tomorrow. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. How do we get the discourse to work better? That's our topic for conversation today. I will get on that after this.